All right, so as we said earlier, that Matric results have come and gone, and now the focus shifts to those who will be going to tertiary institutions to further their studies. Your first year of university is without a doubt some character building. This could be either a good thing or a bad thing. The question now is, how do you maneuver through your first year without hurdles, and what are the do's and the don'ts? We've invited someone who's been in that environment almost all her life. She's a former lecturer at the Vaal University of Technology, Vanderbilt Park campus, and also the former lecturer and HOD at the Nelson Mandela University, Brightness Mangolothi, who joins us now live from our studios in Port Elizabeth. Good afternoon to you and compliments of the new year.
Good afternoon, Palisa, and compliments to you too.
Thank you so much for coming through. It's that time of the year, and I know that, as I said on my introduction, you've been a lecturer all your life. You've been in that environment for as long as I can remember. Anxiety is now starting to build up for the first years, which is in a way sort of normal to get away from home and start this life on your own independently. So what to expect as a first year student?
I think firstly, I need to congratulate the 2020 class. We need to appreciate that in South Africa, only a limited number of students have an opportunity to attend a university. Going to a university is actually a different ball game. The culture of a university is totally different from the culture of a school. So it is upon the student to actually orientate themselves into the culture of a university. Hence, the first most important thing that the student needs to do is to attend the orientation, which I know a number of people neglect to do that, and they just think about going to the lecture hall. The orientation is the best place to orientate yourself, get inducted into the university, where to go, who to talk to. And the minute you are orientated in the different spaces of the university, it actually simplifies your life. And you get to understand how the university operates and where to actually get help if there is a need from a student per se.
So as I said, this is the first time that many will be independent, away from their parents, and they literally get to do anything they want without having to account to anyone. And it brings me to my next point, really. How does one go about balancing that student academic life and that student life socially? How does one bring about that balance? Because I do know that it's very important that you get to balance the two.
I think I can actually remember way back 1996 when I did my first year. Being at a university, it's a very interesting space, especially most people who go to university are like me, whom you've spent the rest of your life literally with your parents, never been anywhere else but just focusing on your studies. So the anxiety does exist. There is a necessity for a student to have what we call a student life balance. Firstly, what I need to say to students, they need to remember why they went to the university. There's a tendency for students to go to university but do not attend classes because of this excitement of this freedom that they've never tasted before. So the first important thing the student needs to do is to attend classes. A class is not a social space, it's a space where you can learn. I think one of the important things that you learn at a university, it's not only about answering questions, it's also about understanding how to ask questions so that it can refine your way of thinking and understand the processes and how to answer questions. But the second important thing, I think when students go to a university, they only think about the intellectual capacity development, acquisition of knowledge. But what they need to appreciate that there are different spheres that they also need to focus on. The emotional wellness, the spiritual wellness, the financial wellness, which is very important. Some of the students, it's the first time that they actually have an allowance. They've never experienced that. So financial management is very important. But also it's about balancing the social life. I always say all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. There is a tendency where some people say, you know what, I'm going to the university, I need to get this qualification, attend classes. A university, that's the space where you actually build your CV. And a building of CV, it's not something that only happens in the classroom. It's something that also happens outside the classroom. So it is important that the student orientate themselves about what other opportunities exist within a university that they can tap into, that can actually assist in building their CV.
Now, you've touched a bit on that freedom where you now get to choose to do whatever you want. You get to skip classes as much as you want, because the reality is some modules are too boring. But of course, it actually brings me to my next point of determination, I think, really, and knowing exactly what you have gone there to that particular tertiary institution for, isn't it?
Yes. I think it's the most important thing is commitment from the student. I think I've worked as a lecturer for quite a number of years, as you've earlier articulated. There is a culture of learning that seems to be phasing out from a student. I think some students, when they come to university, it's because my mother said I need to do this qualification, so I ought to be here, not because they want to be there. So commitment is very important. And what students neglect is that a university is not just a space where you learn about a particular discipline or about a particular qualification. It's a space where you also learn more about yourself as a person. I think if I can use an example of management where we talk about the POLC, where you learn about planning, you learn about organizing yourself, and you also learn about self-leadership. The most critical thing about university is about understanding how do you lead yourself, because mommy is not there, daddy is not there, the teacher is not there to actually tell you this is what you need to do. Hence, it's important when you talk about the planning, organizing yourself, time management is very important at the university. You cannot afford to procrastinate. You cannot wait until the 11th hour and say, no, I'm going to just prepare, just close to the test time. You'll get a shock of a lifetime. And I think that is one of the main reason that is also contributing into issues of mental wellness or mental illness per se in higher education, where you find students are not coping. I know in other circumstances there is also planning that needs that actually takes place, but you find if you do not plan appropriately, you are definitely setting yourself for failure in the higher education. Planning is very important. Yeah. And something that students also do not do is actually visiting your professors or your lecturer's office. Consult, be visible, ask questions, because these are the people who have been in the field. They know what needs to be done, the do's and the don'ts. So if you don't actually engage with them, and they have a leverage of connecting you with people that they've taught, people that are already in the industry. So you need to use of such opportunities. Yeah. And being a student, it's not a question of waiting for an opportunity. You need to create opportunities for yourself.
Very quickly on this one, we speak about coping mechanisms. Let us just very briefly look at holistically the role that parents should be playing in terms of supporting their children when they are at tertiary institutions, because they in a way sort of exert some pressure. You new at this institution, you're still trying to adapt to the changes, and you get a phone call every night, when that's my money, don't waste my money. So the pressures as well that parents create to their children whilst they're studying.
My son actually normally talk about financial accountability. Or he says, yeah, I'm aware that you are paying for my fees. But I think, firstly, what I need to caution parents, the learning per se, when we normally look at the learning space, it's not only about the student learning, it's about also the support that we provide as parents per se. And you find at some point, a lot of students come into university, they are forced to do certain qualification that they know very well that they are not interested in doing. I mean, I can recall somewhere in 2012 when I had a student who said, you know what, ma'am, I don't really want to do this particular qualification. I was told by my mom that I need to do this qualification. By so doing, at some point, we actually frustrate the student. You find the student are disorientated in class, not participating in class. Fortunately, in my case, I was able to engage with that particular student, show the student a bigger picture. And that is something that students do not really appreciate, is that when you do a qualification, irrespective of whether it's a minor module or you don't like the lecture or you don't like the module that is offered, you still need that, that particular module to pass your qualification.
All right.
So parents need to support their kids. They need, it's not only financial support, but also emotional support, spiritual support, and all other forms of support to enable the student to be successful in higher education.
And I think importantly, they should stop living their dreams through their children. Time constraints, I wanted to talk about freshers' balls and Goombas and the likes, but time, we don't have enough time. Thank you so much for coming through. Brightness Mangolothi is the former lecturer at the University of Technology in Vanderbijlpark, former lecturer and HOD at the Nelson Mandela University, talking to us about the do's and the don'ts of first-year tertiary students.